Hello, this is John T. Rhapsodes Esquire, purveyor of awesome old-school audio stories, bringing you a funny Western story today from 1902 called Colonel Sterett's Panther Hunt by Alfred Henry Lewis. Lewis walked the earth from 1855 to 1914, growing up in Ohio. He was a lawyer and a newspaper man, as well as an author of novels and short stories. His most popular writings were his Western Wolfville stories. The following story is one of them. It may also help to keep in mind that an old unnamed cattleman begins the story and then proceeds to tell a story that a Colonel Sterett told him. This story brings to mind a question. What dangerous monsters do you fear most, like Americans of old feared panthers or mountain lions? Hear the words of old. Colonel Sterett's Panther Hunt from 1902 by Alfred Henry Lewis. Panthers is what we all calls mountain lions, observed the old cattleman, wearing meanwhile the sapient air of him who feels equipped of his subject. They's plenty furtive, not to say mighty sedulous to skulk. That's why a gent don't meet up with more of 'em while perootin' about in the hills. Them cats hear 'em, or they sees 'em, and him still ignorant thereof. And with that they bashfully withdraws. Which it's to be urged in favor of mountain lions that they never forces themselves on no gent. They're sure considerate that-a-way, and special of themselves. If one's ever hurt, you can bet it won't be an accident. However, it ain't for me to go around impugning the motives of no mountain lion, particular when the entire tribe is strangers to me complete. But still, a love of truth compels me to concede that if mountain lions ain't cowardly, they're sure cautious a lot. Cattle and calves they passes up as too bellicose, and none of 'em ever faces any animal more warlike than a baby colt or maybe a half-grown deer. I'm riding along the Caliente one time when I hears a crashing in the bushes on the bluff above. 200 foot high she is, and as sheer as the walls of this here tavern. As I lifts my eyes, a fear-frenzied mare and a colt comes charging up and projects themselves over the precipice and lands in the valley below. They're dead as Julius Caesar when I rides onto 'em, while a brace of mountain lions is skirting up and down the edge of the bluff they leaps from, mewing and lashing their long tails in hot enthusiasm. Sure, the cats have been chasing the mare and foal, and they locoed 'em to the extent that they didn't know where they were heading and made the death jump, I reckon. I bangs away with my six-shooter, but beyond giving the mountain lions a convulsive start, I can't say I does any execution. They turns and goes streaking it through the pine woods like a drunkard to a barn raisin'. Are mountain lions timid? Sure. They're so timid seminary girls compared to 'em is as sternly courageous as a passel of buccaneers. Out in Mitchell's Canyon, a couple of the Lee Scott riders cuts the trail of a mountain lion and her two kittens. Now whatever do you all reckon this old tabby does? Basely deserts her offsprings without even baring a tooth. That's straight. The mother lion goes swarming up the cabin like she ain't got a minute to live. And you can gamble the limit that where an animal sees its children perish without fronting up for war, it don't possess the commonest rudiments of sand. Such, son, is mountain lions. Well, it's one evening in the red light, says the old cattleman, when Colonel Sterett, who's got through his day's toil on that coyote paper he's editor of, tells a story to me concerning a panther roundup which he pulled off in his youth. "This panther hunt," says Colonel Sterett, as he fills his third tumbler, "occurs when mighty likely I'm going on 17 winters. I'm a leader among my young companions at the time. In fact, I always is. And I'm proud to say that my supremacy that way is due to the dominant character of my intellects. I'm ever bright and sparkling as a child, and I recalls how my aptitude for learning promotes me to be regarded as the smartest lad in my set. If there's visitors to the school, or if the selectman invades that academy to sorta size us up, the teacher always plays me on 'em. I'd go to the front for the outfit, which I'm wont on such harrowing occasions to recite an ode. The teacher's done wrote it himself, and which is entitled Napoleon's Mad Career. There's 24 stanzas to the poem, and while these interloping selectmen sits there looking owly and sagacious, I'd wallop loose with the 24 verses, stamping up and down, and accompanying said recitations with such a multitude of reckless gestures, it comes plenty close to backing everybody plumb out in the room. Here's the first verse. I'd drink and swear and rare and tire, and fall down in the mud, while the earth for 40 miles about is kivered with my blood. Y'all can see from that specimen that our schoolmaster ain't simply flirting with the muses when he originates that epic. No, sir, he means business. And whenever I throws it into the selectmen, I does it justice. Why, the trustees used to silently line out for home when I finishes, and never a yeep. It stuns 'em. It sure fills 'em to the brim. As I gazes rearward, goes on the colonel, as by one rapt impulse he uplifts both his eyes. As I gazes rearward, I says, on them sun-filled days, and special if ever I gets betrayed into talking about 'em, I can hardly tear myself from the subject. I explains heretofore that not only by inclination, but by birth, I'm sure enough an aristocrat. This captaincy of local fashion I assumes at a tender age. I wears the record as the first child to don shoes throughout the entire summer in that neighborhood. And many a time and oft does my youthful but envy-eaten compeers lambaste me for the insulting innovation. But I sticks to my moccasins, and today shoes in the bluegrass is almost as universal as the liquor habit. There dawns an hour, however, when my position in the van of Kentucky Ton comes within an ace of being seriously shook. It's on my way to school one dewy morning, when I gets involved all inadvertent in an unhappy rupture with a polecat or skunk. I never does know how the misunderstanding starts. After all, the seeds of said dispute is by no means important. It's enough to say that the polecat finally has me thoroughly convinced. Following the dispute and my defeat, I'm witless enough to keep going on to school even though that polecat sprayed me, whereas I should have returned homeward and cast myself upon my parents as a sacred trust. Of course, when I'm in school, I don't go imparting my troubles to the other children. I emulates the heroism of the Spartan boy who stands to be et by a fox and keeps 'em to myself. But the views of my late enemy is not to be smothered, nor was his smell. They appeals to my young companions, who thereupon puts up a most unneedful riot of coughing and sneezings. But nobody knows it's me as the parties who's got so pungent. It's a trying moment. I can see that once I'm located, I'm going to be as unpopular as a bear in a hog pen. I'll come tumbling down from my pinnacle in that proud community as the glass of fashion and the mold of form. You can go your bottom peso, the thought causes me to feel plenty perturbed. At this peril I has an inspiration, as good too as I ever entertains without the aid of rum. I determines to cast the opprobrium on some other boy and send the hunt of general indignation sweeping along his trail instead of mine. There was a student at this temple of childish learning, and his name is Riley Bark. Riley's intellects is like a fly in a saucer of syrup. They struggles round plumb slow. Well, I decides to uplift Riley to the public eye as the felon who's disturbing that seminary's serenity with the polecat smell. Coming to this decision, I points at him where he's planted 4 seats ahead, all tangled up in a spelling book, and says in a loud whisper to a child who's sitting next to me, "Hey, he's the one that stinks. Throw him out." And that's enough. No gent will ever realize how easy it is to direct a people's sentiment until he takes a whirl at the game. In 2 minutes, by the teacher's bullseye copper watch, every soul knows it's poor Riley that smells. And in 3, the teacher's done drug Riley out of doors by the hair of his head and chased him home. Gents, I look back on that youthful feat as a triumph of diplomacy. It sure saved my standing as the Beau Brummel of the bluegrass. Ha! Good old days, them, observes the colonel mournfully, and one's never to come again. But, Colonel, what about this panther hunt you mentioned? Asked Dan Boggs. Which I don't aim to be intrusive none, but I'm camped here through the second drink waiting for it, and these procrastinations is making me kinda batty. Well, that panther hunt is like this, says the colonel, turning to Dan. At the age of 17, me and 8 or 9 of my intimate brave comrades founds what we all denominates as the Chevy Chase Hunting Club. Each of us maintains a passel of odds and ends of dogs, and at stated intervals we convenes on horses. And with these 80 cur dogs at our tails, we goes yelling and scally-hooting up and down the countryside, allowing we're sure a band of Nimrods, referring to the great hunter and king mentioned in the books of Genesis and Chronicles in the Old Testament. Well, the Chevy Chasers ain't been in being as an institution over long when chance opens a gate to serious work. The deep snows in the eastern mountains, it looks like, has done drove a panther into our neighborhood. You could hear of him on all sides. Folks were glimpsing him now and then, and they allows he's about the size of a yearling calf. And the way he pulls down such feeble people as sheep or lays desolate some helpless hen roost don't bother him a bit. Now this panther spreads a horror over the countryside. Dances, prayer meetings, and even poker parties is broken up, and the social life of that region begins to bog down. Even a wedding suffers, the bridesmaids staying away lest this ferocious monster should show up in the road and chaw one of 'em while she's en route for the scene of trouble. That's gospel truth. The poor deserted bride has to heal and handle herself, and never a friend to unite her sobs with hers during that wedding ordeal. The old ladies present shakes their heads a heap solemn. "It's a worse augury than the hoots of a score of squinch owls," said one lady, referring to the ancient Roman practice of augury, which is interpreting omens from the behavior of birds. Well, when this reign of terror is at its height, the local eye is rolled appealingly towards us Chevy Chasers, and we rises to the opportunity. Day after day we're riding the hills and vales, reading the milk-white snow for tracks, and we has success. One morning I comes up on 2 of the Breckenridge boys and 5 more of the Chevy Chasers settin' on their horses at the Skinner crossroads. Bob Crittenden's gone to turn me out, they says. Then they points down to a handful of close-wove brush and stunning timber and allows that this maraudin' catamount is hiding there. They sees him go skulking in. Now, gents, I ain't above admitting that the news puts my heart to a canter. I'm brave, but conflicts with wild and savage beasts is to me a novelty, and while I faces my fate without a flutter, well, I'm here to say that I'd sooner been in pursuit of minks or raccoons or some varmint whose grievous capabilities I can more accurately stack up and in whose merry ways I'm better versed. However, the dauntless blood of my grandsire mounts in my cheek, and as if the shade of that old Trojan is there personal to suggest it, I searches forth a flask and renews my spirit. Thus qualified for perils, come in what form they may, I resolutely stands my hand. There's 40 dogs, if there's one, in our company, as we pauses at the Skinner crossroads. And when Bob Crittenden returns, he brings with him the Rickett boys and 40 more dogs. It's worth a 10-mile ride to get a glimpse of that outfit of canines. There's every sort under the canopy. There's the stolid hound, the alert Feis, the sapient collie. Well, that is, there's individual beasts wherein the hound or Feis or collie seems to predominate as a strain. The truth is, there's not that dog a-whining about our horses' fetlocks who ain't proudly descended from 15 different tribes, and they surely make a motley mass meeting. Still, they're good, zealous dogs, and as they're going to go forward and take most of the risks of that Panther, it seems invidious to criticize them. One of the Twitty boys rides down and puts the 80 or more dogs into the brush. The rest of us lays back and strains our eyes. There he is! A shout goes up as we descries the Panther stealing off by a far corner. He's heading along a hollow that's full of brush and baby timber and runs parallel with the pike. Big and yellow he is. We can tell from the slight flash we gets of him as he darts into a second clump of bushes. With a cry, what young Crittenden calls a view halloo, we goes stampeding down the pike in pursuit. Our dogs is staunch. They sure does themselves proud, singing in 20 keys, reaching from growls to yelps, and from yelps to shrillest screams. They pushes dauntlessly on the fresh trail of their terrified quarry. Now and then we gets a squint of the Panther as he skulks from one copse to another just ahead, which he's going like an arrow, no mistake. As for us Chevy Chasers, we parallels the hunt, and continuous pounding the Skinner Turnpike abreast of the pack, ever and anon, giving an encouraging shout as we briefly sights our game. Well, gents, says Colonel Sterett, as he's again refreshing himself, it's needless to go over that hunt in detail. We hustles the flying demon full 18 miles, our faithful dogs crowding close and breathless at his coward heels. Still, they don't catch up with him. He streaks it like some saffron meteor. Only once does we approach with striking distance. That's when he crosses at old Stafford's whiskey still. As he glides into view, Crittenden shouts, "There he goes!" For myself, I'm prepared. I've got one of these misguided cap and ball 6-shooters that's built during the war, and I cuts that hardware loose. This weapon seems a born prolificate of lead, for the 6 chambers go off together. which you should have seen the Chevy Chasers dodge. And well they may. That broadside ain't in vain. My aim is so true that one of the rearmost dogs evolves a howl and rolls over. Then he sets up gnawing and licking his hind leg in frantic alternations. That hunt is done for him. We leaves him doctoring himself and picks him up 2 hours later on our triumphant return. As I states, we harries that fugitive panther for 18 miles and in our hot ardor founders 2 horses. Fatigue and weariness begins to overpower us. Also, our prey weakens along with the rest. In the half glimpses we now and again gets of him, it's plain that both pace and distance is telling fast. Still, he presses on, and as there's no spur like fear, that panther holds his distance. But the end comes. We've done run him into a rough, wild stretch of country where settlements is few and cabins rude. All of a sudden, the panther emerges onto the road and goes racking along the trail. We pushes our spent steeds to the utmost. There's a log house ahead. Out in the stump-filled lot in front of it is a frowsy woman and 5 small children. The panther leaps the rickety worm fence and heads straight as a bullet for the clearing. Horrors of horrors! The sight freezes our marrows. Mad and savage, he's due to bite a hunk out in that devoted household. Mutually calling to each other, we goads our horses to the utmost, and we gain on that panther. He may wound, but he won't have time to slay that family. Gents, it's a supreme moment. The panther makes for the female squatter and her litter, we panting and pressing close behind. The panther is among them. The woman and the children seems transfixed by the awful spectacle and stands rooted with open eyes and mouths. Our emotion sure beggars descriptions. Now ensues a scene to smite the hardiest of us with dismay. No sooner does the panther find himself in the middle of that helpless bevy of little ones than he stops, turns round abrupt, and sets down on his tail. And then, uplifting his muzzle, he busts into shrieks and yells and howls and cries, a complete case of dog hysterics. Because that's what he is, a great yeller dog. His reason is now a rack because we harasses him the 18 miles. There's an ugly outcast of a squatter, mattock in hand, comes tumbling down the hillside from somewheres out back of the shanty where he's been grubbing, and says, "What be you all idiots chasing my dog fur?" demands this unkept party. Then he menaces us with the implement. We makes no retort, but stands passive. The great yeller brute, whose nerves have been torn to rags, creeps to the squatter and with mournful howls explain what we've made him suffer. No, there's nothing further to do and less to be said. That cavalcade, erstwhile so gala and buoyant, drags itself wearily homeward, the exhausted dogs in the rear walking stiff and sore like their legs is wood. For more'n a mile, the complaining howls of the hysterical yeller dog is wafted into our ears. Then they ceases, and we figures his sympathizing master had done took him into the shanty and shut the door. No one comments on this adventure. Not a word is heard. Each is silent until we mounts the Big Murray Hill. As we collects ourselves on this eminence, one of the Breckenridge boys holds up his hand for a halt. "Gents," he says, as horses, hunters, and dogs, we all gathers round. Gents, I moves you, the Chevy Chase Hunting Club, hereby stands adjourned, sine die, or adjourned indefinitely. There's a moment's pause, and then, as by one impulse, every gent, horse, and dog says, aye. It's unanimous, and from that hour till now, the Chevy Chase Hunting Club ain't been nothing save tradition. But that Panther sure disappears. It's the end of his vandalage. And again does quadrilles, prayers, and poker resume their wonted sway. That's the end of the story. And now, gents, if Blackjack will caper to his duties, we'll uplift our drooped energies with the usual 40 drops. And that concludes Alfred Henry Lewis's 1902 story called Colonel Sterett's Panther Hunt. There are always monsters, real and imagined. The foregoing story involved a great deal of effort that people went to catch and defeat their monster of the day, namely a mountain lion or a panther. What type of dangerous monsters do you worry about? This is John T. Rhapsodes Esquire, purveyor of awesome old-school audio stories. Thank you for listening. You can find more stories like this in the channel's playlists. Find them by going to the channel homepage and clicking on the playlist icon. If you enjoyed this story and would like to hear more, please help me earn the warm embrace of Mr. and Mrs. YouTubes who look with loving favor upon those channels whose listeners faithfully subscribe, like, comment, click the notification bell, and share the videos with their friends so that they too can hear the words of old.